Hello and welcome to this interview with a carer by the Royal College of Psychiatrists Addictions Faculty. I am Dr. Arun Dandaidam and today I'm talking to Sandra, whose son had a problem with substance abuse. Sandra, what I'd like to talk about is what it was like for you when you first found out about your son's drug problems, what happened subsequently, how you coped, and how being a carer has affected you emotionally and physically. Would you mind telling us about your experiences?
Well, we first found out that my son had a problem with drugs on the evening my first grandchild was born. He arrived at the hospital, sat outside with my husband, and he was very emotional and told my husband that he had a drug problem with heroin and that it had been going on for 18 months. So he picked his moment, I suppose. And then I think my husband didn't tell me until the next day, and the next day it was just shock, disbelief. You just can't believe it. It's really hard to take in. And then you go into a state of, well, it's okay now. You calm down a bit because you think, now we know. It's almost like an illness. You think, well, we know now. So you hear all this on television and in the papers about drug treatment. So you think, well, we'll take.
How long ago was this, Sandra?
It was about 15 years ago now, when he first told us, and his drug journey was 10, nearly 11 years. No, it must be more than that, because he's been clean 8 years now, so it's about 19 years ago when we first heard. And so the next day, though we were shocked, we sort of calmed down a bit, because we thought, well, at least we know now, and everything's going to be okay, because we'll take him to drug treatment, and obviously he'll get better, and then everything will be fine. Never realising that the journey was going to be years and years and years. So I suppose we really thought it was like taking him to a GP, where it was a chest infection, where you'd go, they'd get him better, and then everything would be okay. And that certainly wasn't the case, because unbeknown to us, we forced him into drug treatment. Really, he didn't want to go, probably in hindsight, and he went for us, and we just kept on and on and on about drug treatment. After about a year, when it was apparently that wasn't going to work, we took him away. My husband took him to Ireland, where he's got family. We spent about 6 months there with him. But one thing you learn is that they can quickly work out where drugs are available wherever you take them. So we brought him back, and it was just a spiral of... I don't think you can ever underestimate how badly it affects you all. And I think the problem is that everyone isolates you. You become like, I think they become your drug, and so you hinder their progress so much. You change so much in yourself. If I wasn't crying and screaming, I'd be being ill, I couldn't eat, and then if I didn't eat 1 month, the next month I'd be eating and eating and eating. You know, I used to drink quite a bit. Because I'm still trying to go to work, we still need money in the house. So I used to go to work, get through the day, and with guarantee I used to get through, come out of work, get to the car, and then break down in the car, spend about 5 or 10 minutes crying, and then drive home. And then you don't realise, you just take that one drink to calm you down. And then I did that probably for about 6 months or so, till I realised one day that I'd drunk a bottle of brandy in about 4 days, and it shocked me so much, that the fact that I'd drunk so much, is that from that day to this I've never touched alcohol again. So I think it scared me so much. I spent my whole life, most of the time, over the doctors, over my GPs, because I was feeling ill all the time. I was tired, I couldn't stop crying. If I wasn't crying, I was like real angry. I was just shout and scream at anybody.
What was happening to your son during this period? I mean, how long was he in treatment?
Oh, he was in and out of treatment. He wasn't really in treatment. He was in and out. He just started, stop. He was just getting worse and worse. I mean, he was taking more and more drugs.
And how long did this go on?
His whole drug journey was nearly 11 years. From when he told us to when he finished was nearly 11 years.
And how much contact were you having with him during this time?
Well, for the first 3 years, 4 years, he stayed with us, because I was like, if you throw your child out, people tell you to throw your child out. But, you know, I just think, you know they're going to get worse, you know they're going to live on the streets. And my opinion then was, you're just making it worse, and I can't understand why parents do that. And then you get to a stage where you can't bear another minute of it. You just, for your own sanity, I think, I threw him out. I just actually picked up all his clothes one day and slung them all out of the window. And from that day on, I never let him back.
When was this? How many
That
years
was about
into
3 or 4 years into it.
Right.
When my husband had a mental breakdown.
Right.
And was under some psychiatrists, and he wasn't even able to work for the first time ever. He couldn't work, he was ill for about 6 months. And I think the anger from that, because I blamed my son totally for it, which it probably was a bit unfair at the time, but I blamed him totally. Because even when my husband got better, he was a different person.
Wow.
He got better, but he was never his self again. So I blamed him for that. And I think my son was my addiction. I couldn't accept. Well, I just was so sure that while there's life in his body, there was still hope, even though everyone around him had given up. I mean, the drug treatment I felt was just, it wasn't worth him going anymore, because while he didn't want it, it was pointless. He just used to go and get his stuff and sell it. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter. You are helpless. It doesn't matter who you tell about that. They don't seem to want to listen to the family at all, even though it's impacting on the family more than the substance user.
Yeah.
Because at the time, you're a bit jealous really, I suppose, because they've at least got those times when they take the drug, when they forget everything. You haven't got that. Yours is 24/7. So if you can imagine that kind of pressure, 24/7, for 10 years, I'm surprised anyone comes out of it sane.
So what happened to your son after you threw him out?
Well, when he threw him, obviously he went down. He was living on the streets for about 2 weeks. He lived in my shed in the bottom of my garden. And people say throw him out, but that is so hard. It goes against everything, I suppose, a mother's instinct. Every time you get into bed, you feel guilty because you're in a clean, warm bed. Every time it rains, you wonder where they are, what they're doing in the winter. And he slept in the shed, and now you just look back and think, good God, how did you cope with that? And then he just went down and down and down. I mean, he really did spiral downhill once he left the home. He used to come back, he used to break into the house, steal, threaten, get in. Sometimes I just used to give him money just to get rid of him, just so he would go, knowing that he would be back 3 or 4 hours later, but just to go. I think the worst mistake I made, the thing that I try and tell people now, is I started paying off the people we owed, and that was the worst mistake I made, because then they started to come back and threaten us, and we had letters put through our door, fire stuff put. They tried to burn the house a couple of times, and it's the biggest mistake I ever made. Until one day I must have probably been completely crazy, and they knocked at the door again, and I just absolutely went mad and just said, look, I don't care, shoot me. You know, you're not getting any more money, so. And strangely enough, I don't know if it was because I must have looked like a mad woman, they stopped coming.
You're saying soul destroying.
Yeah, I think, and definitely changed me. It definitely changed my character completely. And you soon learn who your friends are. Learn that from it, because people isolate you hugely. And I think we had a huge circle of friends because we were always going out. My husband was involved with a car club, so we had a huge circle of, well, obviously not friends, but acquaintances, shall we say. And I think we went down to one person, stayed there the whole time with us through it. Because I suppose we weren't nice people to be around, you know, we was always depressed, we was always down. You know, there was always some drama going on in the house. If people come round, you couldn't relax because you were so worried about who would knock at the door or whether he would come. There was, I suppose, every day you knew you was going to get something, you just didn't know what. So it was that anticipation of waiting. You didn't know what time of the day it was going to come, but you knew for certain it was going to come. And I think, looking back, one of the things I regret the most is that I never once thought of what my daughter was going through. I never really once thought of her, and yet it was always her that would come back and I'd be crying, or she'd come home from college and the stuff, everything would be gone, or the television would be gone. Or I think the first time I took him to court was because I came home from work one day and I walked in, and on my way to the kitchen to make tea and get a drink, I just looked and I was like, oh, the television's gone. And I didn't have any reaction. Normally I'd be angry or cry, but I just didn't. And I got in the kitchen, I'll never forget, I was making the tea and I thought, this has got to stop. I've got to do something about this. I can't let this go on. And so that was the first time we phoned the police. And sadly, when we phoned the police, the reaction was so dreadful that the police were going on. There was 2 young policemen come, I'll never forget it, and they was going on about that we won't get criminal compensation, and I didn't even understand what that meant. And I do understand it wasn't the crime of a century really, it was only a television and I think a DVD had taken. But their reaction to us was so dreadful that I asked them to leave in the end. I couldn't take it anymore. And I suppose I was so vulnerable. I think that's what people don't realise about. You're so vulnerable that people's words really impact on you, whereas normally they wouldn't. And then I never phoned the police again for the next 2 years, even though those people were coming round and trying to set the house on fire and doing things like that. And my daughter had a baby then, and so I wouldn't allow her around the house because I was terrified of what may happen while she was there or the child was there. But I'm not sure how I became more frightened of the police than I was of the people that were trying to be violent to us.
What happened to your son, Sandra?
I believe he was behind that. You mean while that was going on?
No, what's happened to your son now?
He was now?
Yeah.
Oh, my son's clean now. He's been clean now for nine, nearly 10 years.
Right.
So he's doing really well. He's got a child now, 3. She's beautiful. So he's back on track. He seems to be enjoying his life. I think both he and I realise that there will always be an addiction side of him, you know what I mean? But he's managed to stay clean. But I'd just like to say to everybody that's not been through it, please realise how hard recovery is, not just for the substance user, but for the family, because it takes so long. And you would give your life for it. I would have given my own life many times to have my son recover. But when he went into recovery, I never took any notice for the first year, because often he'd be on and off it. But after that, when it seemed like he'd do it, we didn't know what to do, and no one helped us. And I never forget once he was living with me, and I came in and he seemed really fed up, and I asked him what was wrong, because I was panicking, he was going to go back to drugs. And I'll never forget his words. He said to me, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be normal. I don't know what people expect of me. And I think it was a real frightening, horrible time for him and me, because he was like, by then, 28, and he had no friends and he had to get work. And I was just conscious of the fact that I tried to be an unnatural mother. I didn't want to argue with him because that first argument that turned him back to drugs. And so we were just skating on ice, really, for a long, long time. And I think more support is needed there on both sides, for the substance user and for family.
How has this addiction changed your life, your husband's life and your daughter's?
I think it's affected us all for the rest of our life, all 3 of us. I think now, on the other side of the addiction, I think it's made me a stronger person. I think you come out of it positive. I think there are many positives to bring out of a journey like that. And one certainly the first thing is you're not as judgmental as you probably would have been if you hadn't have taken that journey. You learn a lot from it. I think you learn that you can really love somebody and hate them all in the same time. So many positives. My husband, unfortunately, I think has come out of it the least best out of us all, because he had to break down. And although he's okay now, you know what I mean, he changed completely, and he still suffers hugely from it was our fault, and that he still worries a lot that he'll go back to drugs. Whereas I'm in a position now, I think, well, what will happen in life will happen. So he's got as much chance, I feel, as going taking to drugs or drink as any one of us. So I feel that it's not ended, but he's the same. He's on the same level now as I, or many other people that haven't got an addiction.
And your daughter?
And my daughter, I don't think the anger will ever really go away, because she suffered the most, probably because she lost her brother, but she lost me and her dad as well for 10 years, and she was the one that always seen the other side of it. I didn't see how I changed. I didn't think I changed. I was just, trying to get through the day. But she was on the outside. She see how badly it affected me and how badly it affected her dad and what he did for us. And she couldn't understand why we stayed in there all that time. And so I think the anger's still there. They talk now. I mean, that was one of the dreadful things, that they would both be in the same room and they wouldn't speak. Like, she absolutely wouldn't speak to him. And as my grandchild grew, she wouldn't let him have anything to do with the grandchild, which, was sensible, but really, really hurtful. So he could only see him.
You've gone on and actually done something that very few carers have done, which is you've set up your own charity to help other families with loved ones who are suffering from substance use. I mean, where did the idea for that come from, and what did you actually...
I think probably anger. I used to go to drug treatment agencies in this area, and while they would always talk to you, that I would never turn away. They would always spend 5-10 minutes with you, but you had about 2 seconds talking about you, and then you would revert into what my son needed to do and what they could do and what he should do. And quite frankly, I didn't want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about, what am I going to do? I'm going mad. I really felt like I was so alone, so isolated, and I had no one to turn to. And so I used to travel to London, which obviously was expensive.
When was this?
That was probably about 15 years ago. Oh, where was this, did you say?
Yeah, when was this? That you were travelling down to London?
It was a Phoenix project, it was called, in the Elephant and Castle, which is what, near to by where we come from. And I knew about it because my brother was a cab driver, and he used to pick people up from there. And so I used to go down, and they used to do drug and families. So they used to come out and talk to me. So it was really good. It really, really helped. But I couldn't go one day, and I was like, this is crazy. It must be more than me. There must be more than me in Northamptonshire that are suffering the same. So I had a separate phone line put in my house, in the back bedroom, and I used to do it after work and the weekends to start with. And I knew there would be more people than me. I didn't realise how many people. I suppose I underestimated the amount of people affected. And then after a couple of years, I gave up my job, which was quite a brave thing to do. And I went on through it. My son was he wasn't happy that I was doing that, because I suppose for him, while I'm doing this, it's always a reminder for him. But we do it because I know we help. I know it helps. I think people underestimate the importance of speech, the importance of someone just listening to you. Sometimes you don't want answers, you just want someone to listen. And it really, really helps. And then my husband got involved, and I think that helped him a bit as well.
So how long have you been operating as a charity now?
I started the service up in 2003, and we've been operating as a charity from 2005.
Right.
So, and it does help. It was an horrendous journey. The trouble with it is, as a family member, it may be a year, it may be 2 years, equally it could be 10. I think the likelihood is 10 to 15, but it may never end, and so you have to learn to live alongside that and become strong yourself. Family members often don't need fixing, they just need someone to help clear the fog, and then they can go on and take control themselves. And people say you're enabling them. So if you give money, and if you talk to a doctor or a drug worker, they will say you're enabling them. And I wouldn't argue that you're not, but I would say to you, this is a 24-hour problem. This is not a 9 to 5 problem for the family. quite frankly, sometimes you give £20 just to buy yourself 2 or 3 hours peace, and it's worth every penny. Think of that the next time you say to someone, you're enabling him. Because it's good to say you're enabling him, because that's what you are doing, and you need to stop it. You do need to stop it. But you can't stop it by someone telling you not to give. You need complete support. You can stop it. You can stop giving the money. You can lay down boundaries and keep them. But you can't in seconds. It takes a while. For some it takes, especially if there's 2 people involved, like a mum and dad, because you have to be in the same place at the same time. That doesn't always happen. For me and my husband, it was always, this month my husband would say, that's enough, let's throw him out, I can't bear him more. And I would be saying to my husband, well, you ought to go first, you know what I mean? I can have 10 husbands, I've only got 1 son, so you go first. The next month, I'd be going, that's it, it's going, and my husband was saying, no, you're not throwing my son out. So you just need someone to help you get on the same page and go forward with it. Because I think someone with an addiction becomes like a 2-year-old, don't they? They can play the games. They quickly seek out the weakest person and they go for it. So often we say to families here, think when they were young, you know, it was hard putting down those boundaries. It was hard to say no when they're looking at you and, oh, please. But you know, your common sense part of you says you need to do this for that child to go on. And I think it's the same when you're dealing with someone with an addiction. It is hard. It is hard to lay those boundaries down. But you just have to prepare yourself and prepare for the consequences, because there's always consequences for you as well as that person. Because they don't take to it kindly. When you're telling them about it for the first time, they'll agree. They'll go, yes, that's a good idea. Yes, I approve of that. Yes, I can do that. But they're just thinking, well, you've said that 1,000,000 times, so okay, get your bit out and let's forget about it tomorrow. They don't for 1,000,000 years think you're really going to stick to it this time. So there will be consequences of that, and we try and work out what they are and what you would do. It's really like reverting back in time, I suppose, at times.